Starting off this countdown, we have the psychiatric patient. Over at the Glore Psychiatric Museum in St. Joseph, Missouri is a display of a bunch of weird random objects. You wouldn't think anything of them until you read the caption. These objects were all found inside of a woman's stomach. Yes, this woman suffered from pica. Pica is a condition that causes individuals to crave and eat unusual non-food items. These items may include paper, wood, feces, paint, dirt, and rocks. It is thought that those with pica have an iron or zinc deficiency. There were 1,446 items taken from this woman's stomach, and all of them are on display. These objects include buttons, safety pins, nails, and sewing needles. In our ninth spot, we have the tapeworm. At the Meguro Parasitological Museum in Tokyo, Japan, you will find the world's largest tapeworm. This tapeworm is about 28.8 feet long, and scary enough, it was extracted from a man's intestinal tract. He got the tapeworm after eating trout sushi. So, if you get a tapeworm, it attaches to the inner walls of your intestines where it feeds off the food being digested. Just look at the size of this thing. That was inside someone's body. That is gross. It is said that this tapeworm started off small and then eventually grew that big inside of him. So if you have a strong enough stomach, then you can view this insect along with 45,000 other real-life parasites at this museum. Coming in our eighth spot, we have the jarhead. If you visit the Museum of Criminal Anthropology in Turin, then you will have the chance to see a perfectly preserved head in a jar. This belongs to the man named Cesare Lombroso, also referred to as the father of criminology. Cesare was an Italian medical criminologist, university professor, and a physician. He conducted numerous studies on criminals to try and figure out why some people commit crimes and other people don't. Well, after he died, his head was sent to his colleagues so that his brain could be studied. In fact, that's what he requested in his will. Afterwards, his head was sent to be preserved and put on display in that museum. But seriously, can you imagine that? Like, in his will? Like, to my friend Laura, I give you my house, and my dear friend Jimmy, my brain. Enjoy. Moving on, number 7, we have the mermonkey. To combat boredom and isolation, a UK museum went to Twitter and asked museums to share a creepy piece from their exhibits. That's when the National Museums of Scotland responded, attaching a photo of what they call Scotland's original mermaid. Basically, it's an object that was purposely made to look quite odd. It features a taxidermy monkey with the lower half of a fish sewn onto its torso. But the monkey is shown to be completely hairless, making it that much more terrifying. On top of that, its teeth are rotting, and some have been even replaced with fish teeth. It's a very, very creepy design. Like, who came up with this thing? And let's hope that it's fake and not an actual creature. In our sixth spot, we have the executioner. So, I don't know what's more terrifying, being executed or encountering an executioner wearing this terrifying looking mask. So this mask was said to have been worn by executioners in the 19th century. It is made out of 3 iron plates and features 2 circular eye holes, and the worst part? A terrifying, lopsided grin. It honestly looks like they try to make it look friendly, but then it just went terribly wrong. Now, others have theorized that it wasn't an executioner's mask, but instead it's a scold's bridle. Basically, women were forced to wear this as a form of punishment for behaving immodest or rude. It's meant to inflict pain on the person while simultaneously causing public humiliation. Either way, it's terrifying, and I would never want to encounter anyone wearing it. But if you want to see this mask along with an axe and a guillotine block, it's located in the Tower of London. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the creeping baby. If you're easily terrified with dolls, then maybe just look away for a second. So this doll was created in 1871 by a man named George P. Clark. It's currently on display in the Smithsonian Museum. He wanted to make a doll that imitates human life. In this case, he wanted the doll to crawl exactly how a baby does. So the doll's head, arms, and legs were made out of painted plaster. From there, they were hinged onto a brass clockwork body. The doll then moves forward by rolling along on 2 toothed wheels. But honestly, it just looks like a scary robot baby. So not only is this doll terrifying to look at, but it can slowly creep along like a baby. Yeah, no thanks. All I need is waking up in the middle of the night to that doll crawling along my floor. Coming in at number 4, we have the human doll. This next doll was ranked the creepiest doll in all of Minnesota, and I can see why. It is said to be 169 years old, and it is made with real human hair. It was handmade and painted with a facial tone color. However, over the years, the doll's facial features have deteriorated. Now the doll has gray, cracked, peeling skin and black holes for eyes. It honestly looks like a mummified child. On top of that, it has lost one arm, making it that much more terrifying. Currently, it is stored at the History Center of Olmsted County in Rochester, Minnesota. And at number 3, we have Annabelle. On display in the Warren's Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut is the real-life Annabelle doll that is possessed by a spirit of a girl named Annabelle Higgins. This museum is owned by the demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. Their real-life stories are shared in movies such as The Conjuring. Now, this doll doesn't quite look as terrifying as the one featured in the movie Annabelle, but it's just as deadly. The doll, in fact, is a Raggedy Ann doll. In the museum, Annabelle is contained in a glass case labeled "Warning, positively do not touch." On top of that, there is a tarot devil card stuck at the front of the case. Now, let's say you decide to go on a trip and visit this museum, and then you accidentally touch the case. What would happen? Well, decades ago, a visitor ignored the warnings and banged on the case. Shortly after, he died in a motorcycle crash. On top of that, a priest came and visited the doll and then threw the doll across the room. Upon leaving the museum, he got in a serious accident with a tractor trailer. So, I wouldn't dare mess with this doll. This doll was given to a woman named Donna in 1970 as a gift. Ed and Lorraine Warren were called to investigate when the spirit would harm her and even tried to own her soul. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Conjuring mirror. This mirror is also on display in the Warren's Occult Museum. This mirror is a dangerous object that was used in rituals to summon spirits. However, you can't control what spirits respond, so as a result, you could conjure good or evil spirits. The mirror was given to Ed and Lorraine by a 55-year-old man named Stephen Zellner. He was using this mirror to practice a ritual called mirror magic. After doing this ritual for months, it gave Stephen the ability to see into the future. But then he also started to use this mirror to get revenge on people that he didn't like. He would stand in front of the mirror, stare into it, and envision something bad happening to them. It would indeed then come true. The evil spirits would make sure of it. But then that's when things started to go wrong. He didn't follow through with all of the ritual's requirements, and so the spirits started making bad things happen to him. His home became infested with spirits. They would slam doors, break his dishes, and try to harm him. When Ed and Lorraine Warren took the mirror to store it safely, they almost got into numerous car accidents while transporting it. So this mirror is quite deadly, and another thing you should never mess with.
At number 10, the Dybbuk box. Now, do you remember that the 2012 movie The Possession was based on a true story? Well, that story was based on a Dybbuk box. Now that specific box that the movie was based on is one that now Zak Bagans has at his haunted museum. And this box is actually a wine cabinet that is allegedly haunted by a Dybbuk. And now, a Dybbuk is Yiddish for a malicious possessing spirit that people believe to be a dislocated soul of a dead person. And so it becomes trapped in an object, like this wine box, until a person helps release the spirit. Now in Bagans' box, it's believed the restless spirit can possess the living, and that's why Zak Bagans is keeping the cabinet closed, because he's a little bit scared of it himself, I would think. Now, the box was originally posted on eBay for sale by a man named Kevin Manis, who was having a ton of trouble with it. Anytime he gave it as a gift to someone, they experienced strange issues and its darkness, and it passed through the hands of others afterwards as they would each have their own unnerving experiences with the box. At Zak Bagans' museum, if you want to see the box, you must insist to see it and be 18 years of age or older and sign a liability waiver, because they're not joking around. Now, not all exhibits at the museum stay open all the time. At number 9, we have the Devil's Rocking Chair. Bagans acquired a rocking chair that was owned by the family whose stories are probably what inspired The Conjuring 3. Now, this was the Devil Made Me Do It case in the early 80s. During stories talking about David Glatzel's possession, Ed and Lorraine Warren said the rocking chair would rock on its own, levitate, and even vanish and reappear. Now, David and Lorraine also claimed to have seen the devil sitting in it. So, take that as you will. Now, with all this spooky stuff in mind, Zak Bagans was just sold. He was like, I need this chair. This is, of course, though, a thing that happened on the opening night of the Devil Chair exhibit where he was like, look at this cool chair. 5 people bawled uncontrollably and 1 woman collapsed. So, according to TMZ, just a few hours after Bagans opened the exhibit, he shut down the exhibit. But then, a couple weeks later, opened it back up, less issues. But that opening night started with a bang. So let's go on to number 7. Another thing there, Bela Lugosi's mirror. Now this mirror has many stories attached to it, especially since its namesake comes from its connection to Bela Lugosi. And now, if that isn't ringing any bells, he is most well known for playing Dracula in the 1931 film, so quite a ways back. Now, guides of the tour at the museum say that Lugosi would use the mirror as a medium for scrying and trying to talk to his dead wife, but the truth is the only confirmed connection is that it was originally said to have once been in Bela Lugosi's house, plus none of his 5 wives died while he was married to them, and there is no documentation of him participating in the occult, but the mirror has seen some things. It was in the room when Frank Salitre was mysteriously murdered, a crime that still has not been solved. He was found bound up in the master bedroom with a single in the back of his head. So maybe those who let their minds wander while looking into this mirror fall ill when they project those ideas onto the mirror, or maybe the mirror itself has the capacity to haunt and curse those who look into it. Now, people say they've seen entities reach out to them through the mirror or have the sensation of having their necks bitten while looking into it, but nothing has been confirmed. On to number 6, John Morell's preserved thumb. And now, I don't know exactly what Zak Bagans is saying about this thumb, but it's not John Morell's. Now, he's probably basing his information off an incredulous book written by Virgil Stewart, and the backstory is, John Morell in this book is said to be an occult leader and the head of the mystic clan that's purpose was to steal slaves to plan an overthrowing of authority. But this book was written by Virgil Stewart, who wrote it in an attempt to get more clout after capturing John Morell, who was likely just a horse thief and a slave stealer. Now, Stewart just kind of blew the situation completely out of proportion to try to get more street cred. So while the thumb is real and a real thumb, it's not Morell's, who probably died in prison and was buried with all of his thumbs on him. And now, that's not to say what it stands for isn't scary. People in Mississippi read the book and believed in it, believed in what Stewart was saying. In Tennessee, they knew the truth because they knew Stewart and he was just fabricating things. But in Mississippi, ooh, Nelly, they were suspicious of one another so much. The summer of 1835, people in Mississippi were killing one another and their innocent slaves on the off chance any of them was part of this mystic clan, which is a clan that didn't exist. So now you know the harm in falsifying stories, you can see how this little thumb is a creepy bugger and a symbolism of something bigger than it is. So, worth it in a way to have at the museum. Now, another scary thing at number 5, a cauldron previously owned by Ed Gein. Zak Bagans bought this cauldron at an auction and apparently it was found in a shed on the old Gein property. And if you need a refresher on who old Gein was, he was a grave robber and murderer that would experiment on human bodies, making masks of human skin to wear around the house and use skulls as soup bowls. So no, I'm not kidding. This was his cauldron and okay, what's the big deal, right? It's a cauldron. Well, it turns out, according to the person who auctioned off this item, Ed Gein stored body parts and blood in this cauldron in his shed. Now, obviously as a collector of the horrendous and haunting, Bagans decided he needed it and now it's on display. Now one thing is for sure, that cauldron would make some killer soup. At number 4, Charles Manson's portraits. Another thing in this haunted museum is a portrait of Charles Manson. And now the portrait isn't just haunting due to it being of a mass murderer and cult leader. No, it's haunting because when you look into the eyes of this image, you are looking at Charles Manson. Well, in a way, you're looking at his ashes. The artist of the portrait, Ryan Almighty, used parts of Charles Manson's ashes for the eyes of this piece. And even wilder, Almighty achieved the reddish brown hues of the piece by using his own blood as the pigment. So this piece really is a little piece of the artist and his muse. Creepy. Now, let's go to number 3, Demon House Staircase. So you may think a staircase doesn't have much inherent scary ideas attached to it, and you're not wrong, but this staircase was a part of a whirlwind scary experience. Latoya Ammons and her 3 children allegedly underwent demonic possession in the house the stairs originated from. While living there while renting, Ammons and her children experienced possession and terrifying experiences like walking up walls, floating over a bed, and feeling choked. So, very haunting experiences. And all this escalated to the point that the Catholic Church backed up a priest who performed 3 exorcisms on Amons. And then the family relocated for their own safety with the help of Department of Child Services, and Zak Bagans then bought the house. He was interested with the reported demonic possessions and stories and explored the house until he demolished it, thinking, better done with it. He only kept a staircase and a little bit of carpet that's sealed off in a room in his museum that's voluntary for visitors to see, and even voluntary for staff to see because of the entities associated with it. Which is very nice for the staff members. It's like, it's so spooky. It's okay, you don't have to see it. I appreciate that. On to number 1, Peggy the doll in Peggy's room. Now this one has a past. Let's talk about this doll before it got to the museum. Peggy was sent to a British paranormal investigator named Jane Harris after Peggy's previous owner was having some nightmares where the doll would haunt her dreams. That owner would wake up hot and shaken with fevers and hallucinations, and even her local priest couldn't help her out. She eventually figured it was because of Peggy the doll and sent her off to Harris. Once Jane Harris and her team had the doll, they tried to figure out what was up, and they say that Peggy is possessed by the spirit of a woman from London, born in 1946 and died of some sort of chest condition, which is very specific. Wow. Yes, that's the history, but how does Peggy haunt? Well, apparently through dreams, pushing people away from entering her room in the haunted museum, or even light bulbs going out when people mention Peggy's name. Now, people are warned not to look her in the eye because they could feel chest pains, nausea to the point of vomiting, or really bad headaches. And now this could be the spirit within the doll circumventing some of her own pain, or many coincidences lined up together. But either way, many say the scariest thing they saw on their trip to Zak Bagans' Haunted Museum was Peggy.
Coming in at number 10 is the Haunted Shop Ledger. A family in Kent donated this haunted book to Brighton's most haunted house, Preston Manor, in 2015. The ledger, which dates from the First World War, was discovered bricked up in a shop wall in Brighton by a worker when he was demolishing the building in 1988. He took the ledger home, and soon after, he and his daughter began experiencing visions of men, women, and children, and a soldier with a horse. The daughter was told by one of the spirits that the book must be returned to Brighton for the centenary of its first entry in December 1915. The terrified family then delivered it to Preston Manor, which has its fair share of ghosts and reputation for spectral activity and unexplained phenomena dating back to its days as a private home in the early Victorian period. Now, a medium visiting the house inspected the book and confirmed that they could sense bad things emanating from it. Yeah, I think it's a good idea that the family gave it to someone else. 9. The Iceman. The mummy of Otzi, aka the Iceman, was found in 1991. It is believed that the Iceman belonged to 3000 BCE, and his body was preserved because of the glacier that surrounded him after he died. The cause of death remained uncertain until 10 years after the discovery of the body. It was initially believed that Otzi died from the exposure during a winter storm, and later it was speculated that he may have been a victim of a ritual sacrifice. However, soon after his discovery, people who were involved with his discovery began to die due to violent accidents. Forensic paleontologist Rainer Henn died in a horrific car accident, mountaineer Kurtz Fritz died in an avalanche, and hiker Helmut Simon died after falling off a dangerous hidden path. The Iceman then claimed 3 more lives in quick succession between 2004 and 2005. It's thought that anyone who comes into contact with the Iceman will die, and people believe that the discovery of the Iceman has released a curse and that it has the power to destroy mankind. So why they would put this out for people to see, I have no clue. Number 8. The Hope Diamond. The Hope Diamond is currently sitting in the Smithsonian Institute. It is 45.52 carats, is a dark grayish blue color, and the pendant surrounding the Hope Diamond contains 16 white diamonds, and the necklace chain it's on also contains 45 white diamonds. That is a lot. Now, French monarchs, an heiress, and at least one unlucky postman have met their misfortune after possessing it. The diamond gets its name from its London banker Henry T. Hope, who purchased it in 1839. After Hope's death, the diamond passed through the hands of various owners. It was believed that the diamond was lost in a shipwreck, but it then appeared at a public auction in Paris on June 29, 1909.
Evelyn Walsh McLean, a Washington, D.C. socialite and wife of the former owner of the Washington Post, acquired the diamond in 1911 for $180,000. She too suffered the curse of the diamond as her husband died in a mental institution, her eldest son died in a car accident, and her daughter took too many sleeping pills. She believed in the curse, but she continued to wear the diamond and would not sell it for fear of bringing bad luck to someone else, which is really considerate if you think about it. Now, after Evelyn's death in 1947, the diamond was found, along with $4 million worth of other jewels, stored in shoeboxes in her bedroom. Then, Henry Harry Winston, a leading American jeweler and gem dealer, bought the diamond from her estate in 1949, and in 1958, he donated the diamond to the Smithsonian Institute, where it is today. Number 7. Robert the Doll. In 1904, Robert the Doll was given to 4-year-old Robert Eugene Otto, who went by Gein. Now, some reports say it was a present from Gein's grandfather, while others suggest a disgruntled maid of the Ottos cursed the doll before giving it to their young son, and it's also possible that the maid cursed the doll sometime after Gein's grandfather gave it to him. Either way, this doll was bad news. Robert the Doll, dressed in a sailor suit of Gein's, quickly became his owner's evil alter ego. As legend would have it, whenever Gein's parents would find his bedroom furniture upended or his toys mangled, Gein would say, "Robert did it." Now, Gein grew up to become an artist, got married, and then returned to his childhood house. Gein set up a new area for Robert in the attic, and passerbys claimed that Robert would switch positions without any help and watch them from the window while they walked by, before handing Robert over to the Fort East Martello Museum. Now, according to local folklore, the doll has caused car accidents, broken bones, job loss, divorce, and a cornucopia of other misfortunes. And museum visitors supposedly experience post-visit misfortunes for failing to respect Robert. 6. The Louvre. Yep, you heard it here first. It appears that the whole Louvre is haunted. Long before the Louvre was a museum, it was a fortress dating back to the 12th century, so there's no doubt that there's some paranormal activity there. Now, the Louvre's most infamous apparition is a butcher by trade. He became a favorite henchman of Queen Catherine de' Medici in the 16th century. Now, suspecting he knew one too many secrets about the royal family, the cunning queen planned his death. It is said that from beyond the grave, Jack returned to haunt the royal family, living in the palaces of the Louvre. Nicknamed the Red Man of the Tuileries, he can still be spotted dressed in red, moving about the museum and the nearby gardens. Now, Napoleon claimed to have seen his likeness in 1815. 5. The Cursed Amethyst. The cursed amethyst is located at the Natural History Museum, but before it made its way there, it was owned by 19th century polymath Edward Heron Allen. The story surrounding the stone says that it was stolen from the temple of god Indra during the Indian Mutiny by Colonel W. Ferris, an officer of the Bengal Cavalry. After Ferris's death deteriorated and he died, the cursed amethyst was passed on to his son. Now, the curse of the gem was so strong that he eventually decided to have it stored away in a bank vault inside 7 locked boxes with a note of warning to anyone who dared handle it. Now, Edward also left strict instructions not to remove the amethyst until 33 years after his death. Now, after facing a string of health and financial misfortunes, Edward made several attempts to get rid of the stone, but they all proved unsuccessful, as each time it was returned to him. Then Less than a year after his death, though, his daughter donated the amethyst to the Natural History Museum, where it is on display in the vault. Now, why she would ignore his instructions, I have no clue, but they were strict instructions, so I don't think any of us should get near that piece of amethyst. Number 4. The Unlucky Mummy. The Unlucky Mummy is an ancient Egyptian artifact in the collection of the British Museum in London. The identity of the original owner is unknown, but this painted wooden mummy board of an unidentified woman was acquired by the British Museum in 1889. Now, the Unlucky Mummy isn't actually a mummy, but the mummy board or coffin lid of a high-status woman who lived in around 950 to 900 BCE. Discovered in Thebes in the 1800s, the 4 young Englishmen who first purchased the mummy all died in unfortunate unfortunate circumstances. The Mummy Board has acquired a reputation for bringing misfortune, as it has been credited with causing death in large-scale disasters such as the sinking of the RMS Titanic in 1912, thereby earning the nickname the Unlucky Mummy. Now, the Unlucky Mummy has also been linked to the death of British writer and journalist Bertram Fletcher Robinson. He conducted research into the history of the artifact whilst working as a journalist for the Daily Express newspaper during 1904. He became convinced that the Unlucky Mummy had malevolent powers and died just 3 years later at age 36. Now, with a nickname like that, I'd stay away from it too. Number 3. Begging Bowl. The Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and Occult has something of nightmares. They have a gilded money skull, often referred to as a begging bowl, that was once used by monks to appease angry spirits in Tibet. Skulls of all kinds, including human skulls, were often created as offering plates in which wine, bread, and often blood were offered to vengeful demons in order to drive them away from a holy place. This particular begging bowl belonged to a Chicago area man who recalled that his grandfather often fed the skull blood in order to perpetuate the family's good fortune. The family was careful to never forget the meals because if they did, an angry entity would wreak havoc on their lives. Now my question is, does the museum feed it? Are visitors allowed to feed it? I need answers, but I also never need to be in contact with that bowl, ever. Zak Bagans Museum. Zak Bagans has many haunted and cursed items in his possession, but one I really want to warn you about is Peggy the doll. Now, what's up with all these haunted, scary dolls? I hate it. Now, a warning, it said that if you look into this doll's eyes, it can cause you to have health issues or even get haunted. Now, Peggy is considered to be the most haunted and dangerous doll in the world. After being purchased at a car boot sale, the owner began having nightmares and felt as though she was being haunted by the doll. She contacted Gein, a paranormal and haunted doll investigator, and eventually sent the doll to her. Gein and her team of psychics began working with the doll, running experiments or having paranormal sessions with it, and began posting photos and videos of the doll online. That is when she began receiving comments from people who had seen the video, and immediately after viewing it, began to have chest pain, nausea, and or crippling headaches. Peggy's picture alone is said to cause anxiety, heart attacks, and headaches. Peggy is treated with extreme respect in the museum. She has her own room, and a spirit box is linked up to the room so guests can interact with her if they so wish. And coming in at number 1 is the scarab. The Smithsonian is home to many ancient Egyptian treasures and artifacts, and it's believed that these items are cursed. And I mean, with all the movies about Egyptian curses, this doesn't really surprise me. They have a scarab believed to be from King Tut. Now, if you don't know what that is, they were popular amulets and impression seals in ancient Egypt. There are many of them, and through their inscriptions and typology, they are an important source of information for archaeologists and historians of the ancient world. Now, it's said that bad luck will follow anyone who touches King Tut's body or anything in his tomb, and since these belong to him, I'd say watch out. In 1922, when King Tut's tomb itself was unearthed after more than 3,000 years of uninterrupted rest, some believe the pharaoh unleashed a powerful curse of death and destruction upon all who dared to disturb his eternal slumber. So, since this scarab belonged to him, it's believed to actually be cursed from King Tut himself, so I'd stay away.
First up at number 10, we have the Haunted Mirror. Found in the Museum of the Paranormal and Occult, this dark mirror is said to show you much more than you will ever want to see. The Mobile Museum obtained this cursed mirror from the original owner, who claimed to have purchased it while attending a psychic fair in the Columbus area. Now, there are lots of alleged cursed mirrors out there, some said to be haunted by demons who escape in the night, torturing whoever possesses the cursed glass, which, don't get me wrong, is definitely terrifying. However, this particular object has more of a eerie, foreboding quality that is sure to send anyone who looks into it into a spiral. According to the museum, those that dare gaze into the cursed mirror claim to be struck with very upsetting visions, and some even reported ghastly sightings such as their own corpses staring back at them. Moving on to number 9, Ed Gein's cauldron. So a little backstory on Ed Gein, aka the Butcher of Plainfield. He was a and a body snatcher between 1947 to 1957. Gein grew up very religious. His mother was a devout Lutheran who taught her sons that women were inherently promiscuous and instruments of the devil. Gein became very attached to his mother, arguably a little too much, and after his father and brother both died, Gein became his mother's primary caregiver. But after she died in 1945, something snapped and he became a totally different person. He began to visit graveyards at night, digging up middle-aged women that had similarities to his deceased mother before bringing their bodies home and mutilating them, using their skin to make covers for his furniture, masks out of their faces, or even using the bones for decorations and dishes. Even creepier was when he began creating an entire woman suit from various different exhumed bodies, as he wanted to be able to become his mother and literally be in her skin. It is believed that this cauldron was used by Gein to not only store the stolen body parts, but primarily to boil them so that the skin could be removed from the bone more easily. Nowadays, this cursed cauldron is found at the haunted Zak Bagans Museum and is definitely one of the most terrifying things found inside. Moving on to number 8. The Hope Diamond. As the legend goes, back in 1666, a French merchant obtained this beautiful blue diamond after illegally plucking the gem from a Hindu idol and selling it to King Louis XIV, a sacrilegious crime for which he was later mauled to death by dogs for committing. Fast forward a few years to the French Revolution, and the cursed gem was allegedly stolen again, this time disappearing for years, only reappearing in the 1800s. For years, experts questioned where this jewel had been hidden, but their curiosity was short-lived, as soon the jewel wasted no time ruining lives of those it interacted with, and has routinely been blamed for several tragedies over the years. Some of the misfortunes include the loss of great fortune, people's deaths, and people taking their own lives, while some even say Marie Antoinette's death could have been linked to her possession of the cursed diamond. Nowadays, this cursed object is safely stowed away as a part of the Smithsonian Institution, so let's just hope it's never found and stolen again. Otherwise, who knows what could be unleashed. Moving on to number 7. Mandy. Back in 1991, the Quesnel District Museum received an anonymous donation in the form of a doll, which I mean is never a good start. The donor informed them that she could no longer handle living with the doll due to her constant crying and relentless ability to move objects or even make them disappear, and that essentially she was just way too creeped out and starting to fear for her life. Allegedly, the museum contacted a psychic to see if the information they got from the donor was true, and as it turns out, it was. The psychic advised the museum to get rid of the doll and not keep it, but they went against their advice and included it in one of their exhibits anyways. Soon Mandy began haunting the halls of the museum. Visitors claimed to hear disembodied footsteps, the sound of tapping glass, and some even swear they witnessed her face change and her eyes blink. Even creepier is that when the museum decided to place Mandy alongside other dolls in the same case, the next day all the other dolls were either damaged or found tossed onto the floor in front of the case. After that, they tucked her away and kept her hidden, just in case. Moving on to number 6, Dybbuk box. Back in 2001, a man named Kevin Maris purchased the box from an estate sale. When Kevin bought the item, he was warned to never open it. He agreed and suspiciously took it back to his antique shop, placing it in his basement. But still, the box wasted no time unleashing paranormal activity. The next day, Kevin went downstairs to find all the lights smashed, and his employees were terrified, saying they'd heard unruly screaming coming from the basement for hours. Now, for whatever godforsaken reason, Kevin decided the box would be a great gift for his mom, and so he opened it. Inside, he found a note that read "Shalom," 2 locks of hair, a candlestick holder, and some dried rosebuds, but unknowingly, he also released a demon. One day, his mother surprised him by dropping by the shop, so he gave her gift, only to come back minutes later to her unresponsive. After he rushed her to the hospital, they discovered she had suffered from a severe stroke. After this, he began taking the curse more seriously, so he tried to sell it at his shop, but anytime anyone bought it, they would promptly return it. Eventually in 2003, he put it up on eBay, and a paranormal enthusiast purchased the box, who quickly regretted that purchase after they were haunted by an old woman who would choke them in their sleep every night. It was passed down a few more times, each owner experiencing horrible health issues or claiming to be haunted by an evil demon, until it was eventually purchased by museum owner Zak Bagans and placed in his occult museum. Moving on to number 5, pearls of death. It's probably a pretty safe blanket rule that you shouldn't go around touching too much of anything you find in Ed and Lorraine's demonic collection, but some things are definitely worse than others, and this next one falls into the latter category. Notoriously one of the most dangerous items found inside the Warrens Museum, the Pearls of Death is a cursed necklace said to do exactly as its name suggests. Allegedly, anyone who dares place them around their neck will be choked and suffocated to death. Coming in at number 4, the Shadow Doll. When it comes to creepy dolls, I'll be honest, it doesn't take too much to freak me out. But with that being said, there is definitely a very good reason why the Shadow Doll is one of the most feared possessions in Ed and Lorraine's museum. Now, what starts off the seemingly endless list of creepy things about this doll is that there is no definitive answer as to why it was created or who created it. But according to Ed and Lorraine's files, it was made using both human and animal bones and was absolutely used in satanic rituals, so it is definitely possessed by some less than ideal company. Said to have been found in an antique shop by a couple, they began to think something was wrong after they kept waking up night after night covered in inexplicable scratches. But it wasn't until the doll began showing up in their nightmares, telling them that she was going to them, that they decided to get rid of this terrifying toy. And good thing they did too. Legend has it that if someone takes a picture of this doll, she will visit you in your dreams and kill you in your sleep. Good thing she is tucked away and hard to find. Moving on to number 3, conjured chest. Believed to have been built somewhere around 1830, the story behind this terrifying object all starts with a man named Jeremiah Graham. As the legend goes, he was making preparations for his firstborn, which included this very hand-carved chest that had been made by one of his slaves. However, Jeremiah was not initially satisfied with the chest, and the enslaved man, Remus, received several beatings from Jeremiah and died from the injury. Now, for obvious reasons, this didn't sit well with the other enslaved members of the community, and to avenge his death, they decided to cast a curse on the chest to forever torment the family that had killed their friend. Unaware of this curse, the chest was moved into the nursery, and soon after they began noticing that anytime someone put clothing into the chest, they ended up being involved one way or another in a tragedy, usually their death. Years later, a woman named Virginia is said to have tried to reverse the curse, enlisting the help of her maid to gather what was needed to put an end to the suffering, but it doesn't appear to have done the trick. For a few more generations, the chest continued haunting all that opened it, until finally it was donated to a museum and hidden away forever. Moving on to number 2, Peggy. When Jane Harris, who specializes in haunted dolls, received a package in the mail, it did not take her any time to figure out that this one was very scary. Inside the package was a blonde-haired doll with a note explaining that her name was Peggy and that she was haunted. Apparently the woman who mailed it had tried seeking a priest out to exorcise the doll, but it was unsuccessful, and the woman no longer wanted the doll in her house as she was starting to fear for her life. Jane began an investigation immediately, posting numerous photos online for feedback. Now, a day later, she had 80 emails claiming that the photos of Peggy had made them nauseous or given them intense migraines. Then she got the most frightening message of all. Apparently, one woman suffered a heart attack after looking at the photo. And while she survived, a heart attack from a photo of a doll is a lot. After just 4 days in her custody, Jane began feeling Peggy's wrath and suddenly became very ill. But when a friend took the doll away, Jane's health improved immediately. Peggy does not like anyone to know much about her, but she is known to invade people's dreams and give them haunting news. One woman said Peggy came to her in a dream telling her to watch out for her cat. The next morning, her cat died. After a while, the spirit that was trapped in this doll made life very difficult, and so Gein eventually gave it to a museum. Peggy is now locked away under constant supervision and actually requires a waiver before you can see her face to face. And last up in our number 1 spot, the Basano vase. As the legend goes, the Basano vase was a gift for a 15th century bride on her wedding day. But tragically, the bride never made it down the altar as she was killed the eve before her wedding, still clutching her beloved gift. It said the bride vowed revenge for never being able to reach the altar and marry, and many believe the curse lives inside the vase as each member of her family who took possession of it after her tragic death died soon after. But the strangest thing about this cursed object is that it vanished from the public eye for literal centuries. Somewhere between the 15th century and 1988, the vase's location was unknown until it popped up at an auction in Lira and sold for $4 million. The vase was allegedly sold with a note that read, "Beware, this vase brings death," and the man who bought the vase at the 1988 auction reportedly died soon after. The next man who bought it was a doctor who died 3 months later. In fact, if the reports are true, the longest anyone has ever been able to withstand the evil vase before succumbing to the curse is 3 months. As of today, it's unclear just exactly where this vase is, and so the mystery of the disappearing vase remains. Let's just hope it stays hidden.
Coming up at our number 10 spot, we have Zak Bagans' The Haunted Museum. Zak Bagans' The Haunted Museum is called a haunted museum for a reason. Located in Las Vegas, there's some pretty scary stuff in there. It is known for having possessed objects, and it is proud to do so. From a painting with the real ashes of Charles Manson painted into the eyes of a portrait of him, to Ted Bundy's glasses, this is a museum with some of the most low-vibe items from some of the worst criminals, and so obviously it would be haunted and the items would be possessed. I mean, they advertise it in the name, so they own it. In our number 9 spot, we have the Swansea Museum. The Swansea Museum is said to have one very possessed item, the Swansea Devil. This is an item that looks like the devil, and people have confirmed that they definitely think it is haunted. It has a pretty interesting backstory actually. In 1890, an architect by the name of Sir Arthur Bloomfield beat out a local architect for the job of rebuilding the ancient St. Mary's Church, and the local architect was not okay with it. Apparently, a few years later, he ended up purchasing a row of cottages facing the church, and so he tore them down and built a large red brick building there, and he put a statue of a smiling devil on it. He then placed a curse on the church, proclaiming it to be destroyed and that the devil will look upon it and its rebel smiling. Yikes. Jeez, I love that he wants to rebuild a church, a place for love and forgiveness, and then because he doesn't get his way, he fully does everything that he can to make the church a negative place. Clearly a man who studies the Bible and its teachings. Not. Perhaps he didn't get the job because the priests sensed how insane he clearly was. Anyways, the devil statue resides in this museum and it's clearly haunted. In our number 8 spot, we have the Royal Scottish Museum. The Royal Scottish Museum. That was British, not Scottish, Melissa. It honestly sounds like a classy place to go to. Probably because of the word royal, but whatever. Apparently this museum is slightly terrifying because it is the holder of one very possessed item. An item so haunted that if you touch it, you will die, as well as your family. Not joking. The woman from Leb statue is at this museum, and it has been known to belong to many families that have all passed away after owning it. Within only 6 years of owning it, all 7 members of this one family passed away. This actually happened a few times until it was donated to the museum. The artifact is said to be from 3500 BC, but was found in Cyprus in 1878. So yeah, to say that the museum is showcasing a possessed object would be an understatement. In our number 7 spot, we have the Louvre. The Louvre, located in France, is one of the most beautiful museums in the world. Honestly, it is one of my favorite places to visit in the world, even though it definitely has 1 or 2 or 10 possessed paintings on display. From Dante and Virgil in Hell, to the Sabine woman, to the Children of Edward, to St. Peter of Verona, I have literally made another whole video on the haunted paintings at the Louvre because there's just so many. But of course, there would be. The Louvre houses some of the greatest artists in the history of the world. Of course, there will be some art that is created when a human is having a bad day, but also there are evil people that paint, and that energy would certainly come through in their paintings. But honestly, the Louvre is magical even with the possessed paintings. Put a visit to it on your bucket list for sure. In our number 6 spot, we have the Mutter Museum. The Mutter Museum, located in Philadelphia, is a museum that once started out as a sort of, Ripley's Believe It or Not, and eventually turned into, well, something else. An American medical inventor by the name of Dr. Thomas Mutter donated a bunch of tools and got it off the ground. It's a museum where you can find some odd medical items such as an amputation kit from the Civil War, and my personal favorite, a long human colon that apparently once had 40 pounds of, well, poop. I'm a classy gal. The area that people believe is filled with some possessed items is called the Bone Room. I wonder why. It is a room filled with human skulls. 139 skulls, in fact. Lord knows why. They probably all come alive at night like the movie Night at the Museum. Creepy. The skulls all have descriptions as to how their owners passed away. Like an odd little memorial. Not spooky at all. In our number 5 spot, we have the Museum of Death. The Museum of Death, located in Los Angeles, California, USA, is one of Hollywood's horror museums, in my opinion. It apparently has the largest selection of artwork from serial killers. So yeah, it definitely possesses 1 or 2 haunted items. Oh, and did I mention that the museum has a head as one of its items on display? Yeah, what the heck, right? It's the head of French serial killer Henri Landru. There are crime scene photos from the Manson murders, and also many execution devices. Gosh, as terrifying as this all sounds, why do I still want to go? Curiosity always wins. In our number 4 spot, we have Vent Haven Museum. The Vent Haven Museum is located in Kentucky, and not gonna lie, it fully gives me the creeps. It was created by a man by the name of William Shakespeare Berger. Great name. The museum is famous for its doll collection. Man, I'm not gonna lie, I loved dolls before Most Amazing. Now I find them terrifying. Hopefully I never have to do a haunted Barbie video while working here because that will probably destroy all of my happy childhood memories. Anyways, apparently this museum has 800 dolls. Yeah, a lot of people say that they are haunted, but honestly, if you walked into a space with that many dolls, I'm sure you probably would think that too. In our number 3 spot, we have the Museum of Shadows. Apparently this museum has gained a reputation for being one of the most haunted museums in the US. It is located in Nebraska, USA. Apparently it was once a brothel, so maybe that explains the initial low vibes, but in any case, it allegedly has over 1,000 possessed objects from all over the world. There are many reports of paranormal activity coming from the objects over the years, but also people have witnessed ghosts in this place and have heard laughter from time to time. Lovely. In our number 2 spot, we have the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum. This is probably one of the scariest museums that I have ever come across, and that is because it is literally a former crime scene. It was previously the home of Lizzie Borden and her family, and this is the place where 2 of her family members, if you haven't heard the story of Lizzie Borden, well, she was accused of killing her father and stepmother, and most believe this to be true even though she was set free of all charges. They turned her house into an overnight museum, and the place is filled with gruesome photos that are in the rooms where the bodies were found. Apparently there is a celebration breakfast ready for you if you survive the night. Kinda terrifying and awesome at the same time. Most likely this place has a few possessed items lying around. In our number 1 spot, we have the Warren Occult Museum. The Warren Occult Museum in Connecticut is a museum that was opened by Ed and Lorraine Warren in the 80s, and the items inside side are items that they accumulated on their travels to help free spirits and clear homes. The number one most haunted and supposedly dangerous item in their possession that is possessed is the Annabelle doll, of course. They also have a doll called the Shadow doll that goes into people's dreams and supposedly stops their heart while they sleep. There is a large man structure that was used for satanic rituals and a human skull used for black magic. I mean, the list goes on and on. These guys aren't even hiding their possessed items, they're just owning them and showcasing them for the world to all get creeped out.